making community change is not easy. It's not quick, right? If you want to, for instance, go get involved in, let's say, like recycling in your town, you can't do that in 10 seconds. You can't push a button and do that, nor is that going to actually create change. And so in our case, we have to think about how to help young people truly take action that's meaningful. And that means time. Part of the challenge we're trying to solve for is how do we encapsulate those learning and embody those learning experiences to help compel young people to get that done, as opposed to assume that easy and quick is actually the solve.
This is Future Formed, where we explore how nonprofits are driving efficiency and innovation to make a greater impact. I'm your host, Erik Fisher, and this show is presented by Jotform Enterprise, the leading web form-building platform for nonprofit organizations worldwide. With response data securely stored online, you can create beautiful, customized forms that meet your needs. Stick around until the end of the episode to find out how your nonprofit can access an exclusive discount with Jotform Enterprise. All right, let's dive in. Today, we're joined by two leaders from DoSomething, the largest nonprofit dedicated to fueling youth-led social change. DeNora Getachew, CEO, brings years of experience in nonprofit leadership and civic engagement, guiding DoSomething's mission to empower young people to drive meaningful change. David Crusoe, VP of Product and Engineering, drives the organization's technology strategy, ensuring young activists have access to the tools they need to create impact. DeNora and David, welcome. It's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
A pleasure.
So let's start with you, DeNora. When you began your role as CEO, what opportunities did you see for expanding DoSomething's impact, and how has your leadership helped guide the organization's direction?
Well, again, thanks for having both myself and Dave here. And I think that question is one that we both could answer, right? I came on board as CEO of DoSomething almost 4 years ago, really with the goal of how to evolve DoSomething, the household name and nonprofit or even brand that many people know, to meet the needs of new generations of young people, right? So when DoSomething was founded 30 years ago, respectfully to myself and Dave, we were the young people, right? Like we were in high school or college, and we were thinking about ways to get engaged and form our own civic identity. But now there are new generations of young people, Gen Z, and even coming of age now, Gen Alpha, who think about what social change and social impact and volunteerism and service mean to them in vastly different ways. They're digital natives. They come to this work not needing their awareness raised, but really to have a platform where they could take action and really see some systemic and sustained engagement. And so we endeavored on a process to really understand the needs of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, today's young people, as we call them, figure out how we meet them where they are. How do we create community, belonging, and a sense of purpose in the places where they're already convening, right? We know they're online. They're in the gaming space, they're in social media. Like, how do we meet them there, but also bring them actions and programming that helps them learn about the issues they care about, but also equip them with lifelong tools, skills, and resources to be able to take action. And I think that's what was powerful about the moment that we were in 4 and 3 years, respectfully, to Dave when he came on board. And I'd let him, if you don't mind, answer, because I think his part of that equation and how we took this tech-powered platform and turned it into something relevant to modern youth is key.
I would only add a few things. One is that I am still a young person at heart, and then a few others. The first is that what we had heard from our members at that point really helped guide the work that we've been unfolding hereafter. And so, as DeNora mentioned, young people are coming to get involved in community. They really use the opportunity of DoSomething to learn more about themselves, the opportunity to get involved in their communities, to understand who they are. And so we heard from them that they wanted this opportunity. They use the organization, the experience of the platform to move themselves forward in life. Second is that they need help doing that. It's very, very hard to, and maybe even a little scary to look out the window into the community and wonder how to actually make change. And so they were asking for DoSomething for support to make that happen. And then finally, no one wants to do something alone. It's scary. And the idea of unfolding a collective, the idea of helping young people feel like they had support from peers in making change is the final thing they ask for us. And so to your question, those are some of the pivotal elements that we held on the product and engineering side as truths as we arc the experience forward to meet the mission, meet the moment, and ultimately help young people feel comfortable in the change they're making.
Well, now, DoSomething has activated 8 million young people over the years. How have digital tools and technology evolved to better support and engage Gen Z activists?
some things have shifted, but also some things have not. And so let's talk about the things that have shifted, right? Young people have generationally moved online and so inhabit online spaces from the time they're tiny and so speak very fluidly the idea of digital, but they've also become very savvy in navigating that. And a truth that we've held as we help young people become activists through our digital platform is that we need to be speaking about good, right? And in fact, great. And so they're very savvy to see that an experience provided to them is not truthy, is not great, or might be taking advantage of them, right? And so one aspect of technologies writ large, whether the modality is SMS or email or platform, is that truth has to be at the center of it more than modality. What else has impacted how young people work, right? Young people are very fluid with communicating with one another, but again, also savvy to times when they might be asked to overshare data or information. So those are two things that we have to navigate as we help young people take action. The final, and this is happening now in real time, is that young people are recognizing the dangers of, say, social media and maybe media more generally, and in some ways actually pulling back. And again, looking for the kernel of value to them in all of the media that's bombarding them. And so that's the final sort of element that is pushing and pulling in how we engage. And then I'm sure we'll get to this later, but AI is also now layering into the scene as well. So DeNora, those are a few things on my mind as we meet this moment. What's on yours?
I think that covers the things that are on our, like, that answer that question is the honest answer, because that's where we are as we think about the needs of today's youth and how they are showing up and leading, but also what we've built to help them carry on that journey.
How would you say that you make sure that these experiences that you're tailoring remain accessible and scalable as the organization grows?
Accessibility, I think, is the key component there, right? Relatability, I would like to give us a pat on the back and say we do that well, right? Because we do center young people in what we're building, and we want to be responsive to the needs of young people and what we hear them saying they care about, right? So in this moment, our members who are 13 to 25-year-olds, because we kind of jumped in without actually giving you the DoSomething 101. So DoSomething is the hub for youth-centered activism and service, or leadership and service, just depending on the audience and what matters most to them. But we really are focused on how we fuel young people to change the world. We want to help educate them and equip them to take action to address the most pressing issues facing our world. And we do that, again, like I noted, by making sure we're centering what matters to them. So they tell us in real time, whether it's through focus groups, whether it's sharing feedback as they're taking action and navigating the platform, whether it's through conversations on social media, et cetera. We really are getting the pulse of Gen Z and Gen Alpha in this moment, and then using that to bring to life all of the actions and programming that you see on our platform. So the relatability piece, I think, is we've got that, I would say we do that well. I think when we think about, the accessibility and how we think about scaling the work, that's what's harder to grapple with in this moment, because there's an oversaturation, I would respectfully say, of opportunities available to young people, whether it's happening during school time and out of school time, after school time, weekends, volunteerism in their community. Young people are being bombarded with opportunities to take action and do something, no pun intended, though hopefully that is a phrase that your listeners it'll stick with them and will make it resonate with them again and come to our platform and tell every young person they know. And so for us, it's about then thinking about how we have this bespoke or unique relationship with young people that allows us to take what we're learning, make it relatable, as we've talked about, and then think about scale through partnerships, right, with others who are proximate to young people, who understand the pulse of young people the same way that we do, and have that kind of shared commitment and mission. The scalability piece is also directly relevant to young people themselves, in all honesty, because we know, and our data tells us, that every time a young person comes to our platform, if they take an action, they can get 2 of their peers to join them, right? And so that scalability also comes from the power of peer-to-peer engagement, which is one of our signature kind of hallmarks and core competencies. And so we use that to drive scale within specific programs. But then as we think about this larger movement we're building with young people at the center, we also think about how that translates to building more programs or actions on the issues that matter most to young people. And those kind of fall in 3 kind of big pillars I would describe as safety and well-being. So young people are, facing the pressing threat of climate, of feeling climate anxiety, right? So it's like intersecting at climate, but also on mental health. thinking about the pervasive threat of gun violence and what that means in their community. And then, of course, technology at scale and how they relate to that in this moment. Equity and justice, those are young people's words, not ours. And they say, right, like we're living in a world where they don't have a clear sense around their own economic mobility and their ability to see a better future, one that allows them to be independent, autonomous, and save for and plan for their own economic independence. They say they are concerned that their elected leaders don't trust the voices and center the voices of young people in decision making and have their best interests at heart. And then, they say third pillar of issues they care about is climate and sustainability. Like, what are we going to do to ensure we are protecting ourselves and our planet from future harms? And so, as we think about that, the intersection of those issues, that scalability comes from the direct connection to young people who can help us think about how to get to their peers. It comes from relationships with school partners who can, educators spend more time with young people than their parents do, respectfully. And so how do we get proximate to them? And then it comes from that influence that we have online to help young people really think about how to expand our reach and how we get to more young people.
How does DoSomething's approach to fundraising differ from traditional nonprofit models?
I guess that's a question I have to take first, huh, Dave? As the chief executive officer, right, one of my core responsibilities is fundraising and being the fundraiser in chief, in addition to the thought leader and the brand representative in chief of the organization. And I think what's fascinating about our approach is that it has evolved over time, right? So DoSomething was in the vanguard of being able to couple creative strategy and marketing and kind of bespoke call to action campaigns with corporate philanthropy, corporate marketing partnerships in the early 2000s, I would say, until, half a decade ago at best. And so we were able to be a part of building that movement whereby corporations could help get to young people to help them do good. Young people could get proximate to big brands and help them understand how to understand young people. But over time, that's evolved, right? One, because we're living through, I think, a cataclysmic and transformative economic moment where all of our notions around how impact happens and where investments and philanthropy are made are really much more contingent upon the brand's commitment to its own theory of change, as opposed to this larger kind of social do-goodism, if you will. And so that's required us to think differently about how we fundraise to make our work viable and sustainable, right? So it's not as much about bespoke call to action campaigns as it is about convincing and inspiring those who believe in the power of young people, who believe in developing the youth leadership competencies of young people to invest and do something in our work to help educate and equip young people to do good. And so that's required us to diversify our fundraising strategy to make sure we're also sitting proximate to traditional philanthropy, to foundations who've invested in that youth leadership development and social impact work. Sometimes even that civic engagement work, to talk directly to individual donors, right? So whether that's parents, educators, those who care about the future of our society and want to invest in young people who can do good. And I would have said, if you'd caught me at a different moment, I would have said to talk to government, right? Who has historically been a supporter of an investor in that type of work. We want to make sure we're talking to, and we still can, talk to our government leaders who are funding education budgets and are making sure they are resourcing the nonprofit sector to help them do the good work that happens in community every day. I know Dave has also been, he's a great advocate and lived champion of the culture of philanthropy. So I would love to invite him to, provide any additional context there that he'd want to offer.
Sure. It is most definitely an equation of all of us, right? And so this is a time, all times are times, but this in particular is a time when all of us are needed to support philanthropy and development at the organizational level. And the second bit on my mind is also that organizations, nonprofits, and foundations are grappling with how AI is emergent onto the scene within the realm of development that looks like many things. DoSomething was very early. It was a very early player in the use of language models. And so as the conversations about sort of AI and fundraising hit the scene, we were able to participate in conversations about what responsible looked like, what good looked like. And in some, it does roll back to the conversation about all of us contributing. The idea is not that AI will supplant or replace what individuals have to do, the great work that we all do, the great thought we have to put into the programs that we wish to run and design. It's not a responsible practice, for instance, to tap AI to write that or to create that. Instead, humans have to be doing that very real, very caring work. And I think it's one of the things that we've found, right, is that there is nuance in how some of the new technologies are also hitting the scene. And in a sense, maybe a return to quality, right, is a time when that's really required as well.
Now, DoSomething collaborates with foundations, corporations, and government partners to scale impact. What strategies have been most effective in securing those meaningful sponsorships?
I think it's driving with the impact, right? And noting and being able to demonstrate, not even noting, being able to demonstrate the impact that we have with young people, both as we directly hear it from young people and they share their lived experience and navigating the DoSomething platform and taking action and the impact that comes from that, but also quantitatively, right? To be able to demonstrate that when a young person showed up at DoSomething, they had less knowledge about an issue or less knowledge about how to take action in their community. And that over time, as a result of engaging with us in our work and our programming and impact teams, intentionally designed programming, that they saw an increase in their knowledge or better skill development or felt more equipped to take action and lead change, right? And so we've actually had to have those proof points. And, we are, I guess, Dave, now we're in the third year of a 3-year strategy, which feels kind of like mind-boggling to me. And now we have those proof points. And so it's about going to market and making the case. But we are in a very different philanthropic environment, right? Because what you're seeing is a evolution/contraction in the marketplace, right? There are not more grants coming into the field in this moment. In fact, what we see happening is that funders are being much more circumspect and circumscribed around their own philanthropic theory of change and how their investment strategy will meet that moment. And so they are giving more significant and committed gifts to fewer organizations, whereas I think in a different philanthropic moment, harken back 4 years ago, 5 years ago to COVID, there were more gifts going out to a wider net of grantees. And I think we're seeing the exact opposite happen now as we watch this market evolution happen.
Our intent is impact. Let me start there. And so the impact is driven not just in the content and experience of our programming, but the platform itself, in fact, is built with a baked in, very lightweight, responsive pedagogy, a sort of a 21st century way of learning and teaching in which young people set objectives and then are supported to meet those objectives. And so even from the get-go, the very core experience of the platform driving out the programming and the action that young people take, we're arcing toward the impact that DeNora mentions.
Are there any data-driven insights or automation tools you're using to optimize donor engagement and campaign fundraising?
There are definitely tools, right? And more tools in the mix than we had, I would say, 4 years ago when we both came, right? So we are deploying and intentionally deploying a CRM to help us be able to track that. I'm not going to use proprietary names because I don't need to do free advertising for a specific tool. But I think, yes, we're using more of proprietary software to help us track donor engagements, track grant cycles, track money raised, et cetera. I think, and I would love for you to talk to this, Dave, the way we can tell the story of impact is also being more intentional about the tools that we implement that help us track our member impact. And so it might be helpful to speak to that work, Dave, and what you and your team are doing and supporting there that then drives our fundraising strategy and how we're hopefully making those money moves.
For sure. Foundationally, we collect the data that we need to collect and not more, right? So privacy is ever at the heart of the conversations we have. With that said, the data that we collect help drive the organizational understanding of what impact looks like. And that looks like a few things, right? So from a programmatic perspective, we want to know that each individual program is resulting in young people learning and gaining skills, right? And so we have formative and summative evaluations built into those experiences. Those are maybe more finite. On the product and engineering side, we use lifecycle metrics to understand how long our members are engaging. So for instance, to put it simply, like how many kinds of rich interactions are members having over what length of time and at what point is there a drop off, so we can incentivize and build really a membership life cycle that optimizes for outcomes, right? Outcome driven and impact driven work that lets us bring tools, basically features and practices against optimizing for that life cycle. So in terms of automation, once again, there's no replacement for good hard work, sir. It takes a lot of good hard work to set up those pipelines. In some cases, we've used language models to begin to analyze data. But what we have realized and what our research teams have found is that they're not replacements for humans doing the work, because there's still quite a few assumptions that language models are making and even machine learning tooling is making that drive in the right direction, but don't quite land in the right place. And so in terms of automation, we, obviously have lots of data pipelines automating the results and reports we see, but the human in the loop is still necessary all the way throughout. So hopefully that helps sort of describe the programmatic side, the product and engineering side, and how we've brought some tooling against it. I'd say finally, we've rebaked our data pipelines. And so we have our production databases that have sensitive data and then anonymize and push out to our research data sets that we use, a different set of the team uses.
DoSomething mobilizes youth-led action across social issues. Given the digital-first nature of today's youth, how do you design tech-based experiences that make it easier for them to get involved?
That's coming my way, right?
I
see that. I see it.
It's a layup. It's like a layup.
All right, let's take it. Can I do it in one word? I guess I would say like authenticity is so key. In the conversation, and I'm reflecting on your question, it's easy to start with assuming that reducing friction to get engaged is a good thing, right? We want young people to be able to like act like that. Guess what? How much friction do we have in our daily life? Like if we want to order something from a retailer online, we can push a button and it basically arrives the next day. Maybe that's not always good. And so there's a role as we think about helping young people engage quickly and easily. The question is, where do we want there to be a frictionful experience? First, we want young people to be very cognizant of their own thoughts, what they want to achieve. And so as I mentioned that pedagogical framework before, we actually prompt them to think about that as part of their process for getting involved. We want them to reflect on that. Is their intention, what we call it, still valid? Do they want to shift that? And are they driving out the impact they want to see? The next thing to think about is that making community change is not easy. It's not quick, right? If you want to, for instance, go get involved in, we'll say like recycling in your town, you can't do that in 10 seconds. You can't push a button and do that, nor is that going to actually create change. And so in our case, we have to think about how to help young people truly take action that's meaningful. And that means time. And again, that's a frictionful experience. And so the part of the challenge we're trying to solve for is how do we encapsulate those learning and embody those learning experiences to help compel young people to get that done, as opposed to assume that easy and quick is actually the solve. I think, DeNora, you used to say, what was your phrase? You had a phrase when I first joined, you had a phrase, it was something like slacktivism.
I was like, did you want me to? So, I think you said it so well, this like friction, when should there be friction and when shouldn't there be? And we're living in a moment, all moments are moments, but in this moment, I think it's also important for young people to see the power of change making taking time. And I used to say, I don't say it as much anymore, but we don't want young people to be slacktivists, right? Like we don't want to engage them in parallel activism via our platform and think like, if you took an action and you took an action, even if the action was reading something, that now you're an activist, right? Like, and I think we've gotten to a place because of the doom scrolling and the clickbaitism where some of what happens online for young people and adults for that matter is that slacktivism. Like, oh, well, I liked it and I hearted it on the internet, so I did something. And that can be a step in the journey, right? There's like passive activism and more active activism, if you will. But if we are truly going to make sure we have young people engaged and driving towards change, what I really like to say to young people is democracy is a full contact sport and we need them in the sport. Listen, every good athlete, I was giving Dave his like layup move, right? Every good athlete will sit on the bench at any given moment. And we do want to make sure young people understand the importance of self-care and taking care of their mental well-being, because we don't all need to be activists every day, all day. The flip side is we need young people. And I think this is the power of our new DoSomething platform, which I hope Dave is going to get to like really talk about the work that he's done to build that out and build out that journey. We want every young person who comes to our platform. We have 1 million active young people on the platform, of which 10 to 20,000 of them are really doing something, no pun intended. We want all of the young people who come to our platform to know their civic identity, to understand what issues matter to them, and then we want to equip them to do something, right? So that they are engaged and know how to engage in the full contact sport that is democracy.
Well, as you're alluding to, DoSomething has laid out a bold, multi-year strategic plan to expand its reach and its impact. So what tech or digital initiatives are you investing in to ensure the organization continues to lead in youth activism?
Oh, I suspect that's for me to answer. So let's do it.
That's why we needed you here, Dave. It had to be the two of us. We had to banter.
So first of all, let's start with the journey, right? Let's talk about the journey we want our members to have. So we know that young people are very curious about how to engage in community change. And so we talk about the first step in the journey as one of curiosity. So how can we pique their curiosity? And as DeNora mentioned, how can we help them reflect and recognize more about their curiosity and themselves through that process? And so the first step in the journey is exactly that. It's helping our young people understand who they are and what they can do. That leads to a stage of getting, we'll say, like invested in a lightweight way, right? And so young people might take on one action within their community, and ideally they feel some quick success, so they want to move on. The next stage in that journey becomes one of deeper investigation and ultimately of leadership. And so we've had a number of young people over the past few years who have truly become leaders, who have pitched their own idea for change they can make in their community. I'm thinking about Ember Collective and mental health. And through that experience in partnering with DoSomething, have launched initiatives that have made substantial change because of ideas they've had and on their own right? And so that's almost the penultimate step in the journey. And ideally, they are then helping young people coming after them to get deeply active as well and sort of passing on the knowledge they've gained, right? And so that's effectively the membership life cycle. The platform needs to support that, right? And so the platform helps young people enter, express their curiosity, understand who they are, and then take subsequently more challenging actions to become leaders. What does that do today, and where do we want it to go? So today, the broad components of that are laid out. We started rebuilding this, looking at a calendar a little over a year ago, and we launched our new platform in June. That gave us the June of last year, sorry. That gave us the flexibility to truly arc out the journey that we seek, right? This multi-step journey that I've just described. Where we're going is understanding how language models can better support young people as effectively a navigator of change, an impact navigator. So this concept of helping young people reflect and understand more about who they are, of aligning opportunities to them, and then finding ways to support them through that, through the cycle of impact, right? As we talked about before, it's very easy for a young person to say, I want to do something, but then look out the window and think, it's a little bit drizzly out. I'm not going to go do that. And so how can we truly help people take that step, right? This is what we're looking at advanced tooling to help support, right? We really want to see sort of the throughput of youth engagement increase. And I'd say that's where the effort is going to be placed over the next 12 to 24 months, right? How can we truly, maybe not optimize being the right word, but truly support young people to feel loved, feel supported, feel respected, honored, all of the positive words I can conjure, so that the impact, their impact in the world is really even more marvelous than it is today. It's already marvelous. Let's make it more so.
What key metrics do you track to measure the effectiveness of digital campaigns and youth engagement?
It's a great question. I would say several metrics, but we're getting more diligent and thoughtful and clear, there's a good word, on what are the metrics that actually drive towards impact and sustained engagement, right? When we came to DoSomething several years ago, both of us now, right, we were in a very different moment in the world as well as in this organization. And there was almost this identity realignment, or maybe even new identity that we had to build for ourselves and the organization, what impact meant to us, right? So I mentioned earlier in the conversation that so much of our work in the early days had been built upon these bespoke campaigns, right? Like you can just fire up a bunch of young people to do something about, you name it, right? Whatever that cause was. But it wasn't sticky. It wasn't sustained. It wasn't necessarily going to be the thing that young people would keep doing, right? They'd do it once. Maybe that's where Dave's like Slacktivism comment about, comes in. You do it once and then you'd move on, right? And you may never do it again. That meant just us as an organization, but it also meant the young people who we exist to fuel to change the world. And when we thought about what impact meant to us, it couldn't just be about a bunch of impressions, a bunch of like flittering around on the internet, liking and hugging things respectfully, right? Like that was relevant to, exciting, novel, and dynamic to Gen X, which Dave and I are in Gen X, and even old millennials, right? They were like, ooh, the internet, like show me more. I want to know, market to me, tell me everything. And then you saw that evolution. And even as the oversaturation of all of that marketing to us and advertising to us came to the fore, it became, wait, but does that actually lead to the change I seek in the world? And so you had new generations of young people saying, that's not it. I don't actually want to be marketed to. I want to know that you know the celebrity or the influencer who's a part of this campaign. I want to know that you are actually committed, you as in DoSomething, an organization, committed to helping me on my change-making journey, and that I can actually see that if I took this action, that it would lead towards some level of change. It may not be the systemic change, but it's on that journey, right? So you hear us talk about journey a lot. And so to answer your question, it became less about the vanity metrics. That was a Dave term that I like. See, I threw it back at you. That's a throwback one. Of the vanity metrics of like how many likes or impressions did we get on the internet, and more about, did we actually increase the knowledge, skill development, tool sharing, resource capabilities of new generations of young people who are passionate about change? And so when we think about the metrics we capture now, yes, we can still say we know about how many impressions any media hit or any action, how many young people have seen the action online. But when we talk about impact and how we can help fuel young people to change the world, we're talking about, did we see increases in their knowledge and their ability to believe that they understand why an issue is an issue? We're talking about whether young people left after taking an action and felt like they had the skills they needed to do something about it longer term. We're talking about, and I think this is the piece that makes my heart flutter, if I'm allowed to have a heart flutter, like, did we actually equip a young person to believe that they could be a change maker, right? Like that sense of agency. And so those are just some of the metrics that we capture as we think about what change making looks like for new generations of young people. Dave, obviously feel free to weigh in if I've missed anything there, because there's, lots to say always.
I've nothing to add, right? I mean, we have lots of sort of subservient metrics to that, right? And so we use the subservient metrics to like drive out on the bigger ones, but those are definitely the big ones.
Okay. We've name dropped AI a few times here. Let's officially talk AI. As you're aware, it's becoming more prevalent in nonprofit tech. Or are there any ways that DoSomething is exploring AI tools or data analytics to enhance youth participation?
Oh, so many. We were very, very early on the scene with AI and language models, and so when the conversation even like had a spark of starting, I want to say it was like more than a year and a half ago now. It was a while ago. We pulled together a group of young people to have a conversation about AI, and even at that point, it was about 20 of them. They're already starting to adopt it into the ways that they worked in the world, right? Primarily school in their case. We also brought in someone from our board who knows quite a lot about AI, and he was able to speak with them about the affordances, the drawbacks of the technology. And we used that learning experience, even at that point, to build some prototype AI tooling so that our team had experience not just thinking about the tools, but actually working with the various tool sets and thinking about prompt engineering and strengths and drawbacks. And so we used that and we tapped that early learning experience to then drive out on the integration of larger AI tooling within the organization, right? And so one thing that we do is use it for some automation within the DoSomething experience. It's not replacing what a human does, but what it does do is provide a safety layer. And so, for example, we know that our members want to share the intentions they have, right? Well, there are thousands of them, thousands and thousands. And it happens that language models are very good at teasing out the good from the bad in that context. And then members themselves are good at flagging things that get past that filter. We've had no flags, which is really telling. And so we use it sort of as a moderation layer. Again, human in the loop, but a pre-moderation layer. Next, we do use it for data analysis. We talked a bit about that a few minutes ago, right? This idea of like using a language model or machine learning to quickly look at a cluster of data and elevate findings that could be interesting for us to pursue, right? So once again, it's not actually baking the findings. We don't use the findings it bakes. Instead, we use it to understand where there might be findings to more deeply explore and make sure we're using sound methodologies to go explore as such. And then finally, as we mentioned, we're using it for the possibility of a deeper member support. What that won't look like is a chat agent, right? Because I'm sure we've all seen way too many of those. It's like the modern Clippy on the side of your screen. Hello, I'm your friendly chat agent. Can I help you? Young people don't want more of that. But we do have opportunities to create really thoughtful interfaces and user experiences that use the strengths of a language model to provide better contextual support, better communication reminders, et cetera, to members to help them really finish out what they've set out to do.
How do you ensure that AI and digital tools enhance engagement while maintaining trust and inclusivity?
I think first of all, uh, we are not making loan decisions about members using AI tooling, right? Nor do we actually make loan decisions. But I guess that is to say that the critical decisions about membership are not getting made by AI tooling, right? There is a level of responsibility, again, human in the loop for anything that's truly critical when a human needs to be making that call for so many reasons. The next thing is that we need to be really thoughtful about which data we're sharing with which tooling, right? So vendors have privacy policies in place, but those only are so transparent if you've tried to read one. In reality, what it comes down to is minimizing how much data is being shared across tooling states and using a principle of basically like least data capture, least data share to be providing functionalities, right? And then finally, transparency. So talking about where things are used, how things are used, and how they impact the member experience. So there's a lot of clarity about what we are and what we are not doing. And I think those are all the ingredients of trust, right? And so ultimately our goal is to build a trust with our membership. And if we are going to do that, we need to be transparent. We can't share a lot of data. We do have to be responsible for what we're using and what we're not using AI tooling for. So
as DoSomething continues to evolve, what's on the horizon? Is there anything you can share about what you're particularly excited about?
So as I did mention, right, we have our roadmap in front of us. We are looking at ways to deepen the membership journey and really pioneer the use of some interesting technologies in doing so, again, responsibly. So that's I'd say that's really exciting, the product and engineering side of the house. And ultimately it's all in service of impact, right? We want to see the world be an even better place. And so we know that we're doing that. We know our work is engaged with that in mind.
And then I would just say, right, I think you heard us throughout this conversation talk about the evolution of DoSomething, right? And the work that we are doing to really center Gen Z and Gen Alpha voices, digital native voices in where we go from here. And so one piece of that, and I think one responsibility we have as a tech-powered platform is to know the role that we can play in educating young people to how to safely and smartly use technology for good, right? And when not to use technology, right? So we've got a whole suite of programming that we're hoping to kind of build out over the course of this year and next. That's going to be driving towards how to educate young people about smartly using AI, how to help them understand when it's okay to not be on screens and how to take a break from the overwhelming saturation of technology in our lives. And then what does it mean? And we've launched this one already, so I'm really excited about it. But what does it mean to help young people be smarter and safer digital consumers, right? As they are online transacting business. Like I laugh because I have 2 teenage girls. And if I handed them a checkbook right now, they would have no idea what to do with it, right? Notwithstanding the lesson that I'm like, and then you fill it out and then you write it in the ledger and da-da-da-da-da. They would be like, wait, first of all, you're going to write this like paper-based currency. You're going to mail it to someone. Where's the stamp? Like all of that, right? We have to deal with that. Some of those more traditional forms of transacting business. But if we're going to help today's digital native youth thrive in a digital world, right, and we are solidly in it, we also have to educate them about how to transact business online. And so we launched a campaign this year called Spot the Scam, through which we're helping educate Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They're like, stop being so susceptible to fraud online, right? Like the data shows they're more susceptible than their grandparents, right? So if you could remember 5 years ago, I could literally every day remember telling my mom, no, mom, the IRS is not calling you, asking you to give them your social security number on the phone, right? Like, let's be honest about how that works. Today's digital native youth don't even carry digital, real currency and don't often remember that when they're transacting business or, things are coming into their inbox, like to take a second, to take a pause, 9 seconds in it to be exact, and just figure out like, is this real or fake before they click on the link? They're just so used to like, click here, do the thing. And so how can we help them live and navigate that moment? And then we're going to deepen our commitment to that journey, right? Like it is not, civic engagement, finding your purpose, volunteerism is not about the one-off activity. It is about how all of the things you do level up to that individual theory of change, right? Your own personal mission statement of like, how will I do good in the world? And if we can do anything here at DoSomething, our hope is that we are helping young people find their own personal why and then giving them the tools they need to stay engaged, stay committed, kind of deepen that commitment to that personal why and that collective why that now is possible through our new platform. So we'll be doing a lot of work there to deepen exposure to that personal why, but also the shared and kind of collective, as we say, action.
Finally, where can people go to learn more, get involved, or support DoSomething's mission?
Well, there is a website, DoSomething.org, that is the place to go, whether you be a young person listening or an older person listening. There's a lot to find in that space. DeNora, what might you add?
That's it. Go to DoSomething.org, find out how you can get engaged, tell a young person, find us on all social media at DoSomething, and really find ways to learn more about our programming, tell a young person in your community how you can get engaged and help us fuel and propel our work. You can donate there, you can take action there, etc.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Future Formed. DeNora and David, thank you for sharing your insights and for your incredible work you're doing at DoSomething to empower young people through technology and activism. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we have a special offer for nonprofits. You can apply to receive a 30% discount with Jotform Enterprise. Visit jotform.com/enterprise/nonprofit to get started and see how Jotform can support your mission. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe, share, stay connected for more stories of innovation and impact in the nonprofit world. Until next time, I'm Erik Fisher, and this has been Future Formed.